Good afternoon, everyone. So obviously I'm a little lonely this afternoon at the moment, but there will be someone joining me. We are talking about Friends or Foe, the power of self-help books, because obviously there's a huge industry. It's worth absolutely crazy money. Absolutely crazy money. But if you are joining and tuning in, obviously we want your questions, your thoughts, or everything like that. And of course, the fact that we're talking about a £1 billion industry. It is huge and it is growing. Okay, that's the one thing not to forget here. I'm not talking about something that's just shot up and it's gone forever and that's it. It is an industry that is forever growing and changing and enhancing, and it is here to stay. Okay, so what is personal development, self-help? It's obviously the things that we class to help ourselves. So this could be a guidebook or something that gives us advice, and there is so much out there that focus on different elements of our lives. So Rishad is going to be joining me. He's just on his way home, so he's just going to be a few minutes late. Oh, and speak of the devil, there he picks in, just like that, just as I speak of you.
Hello, Liz.
Where's my microphone? I've just realised my microphone's across the desk and all sorts. It's a tech day. A tech day.
How are you, Liz?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Yeah, all right. Just came straight from the dentist, pick up my daughter, and got on the call.
I love the dedication. But of course, we're just saying that obviously we're dealing with a huge industry. Introduction. It's billion and it's growing and growing and growing. So self-help books are here to stay, basically. And of course, there is so much out there that it can be very, let's say, confusing, overwhelming. You can think that something's going to help you, but it's not so much the book that helps you, it's what you do with the knowledge and things like this.
That's the big thing that people need to gain out of self-help books is the information, but the implementation only happens through practice. And what sabotages us or what prevents us from making those changes is not because we don't have the information. There's tons of YouTube videos, books, everything, courses, and all the rest of it. Is that first of all, it is having the courage to change old patterns, number one. And number two, to have someone to keep you accountable, because we sabotage our own growth. And that's the big thing. So self-help books are very powerful tools if used in combination with implementing what's been said, and then ideally have someone to keep you accountable, never yourself, because it's the self that you want to change. That's what it's called, self-help. And if the self is the way you don't want it to be, you need someone to help you to, who's not yourself, to help you with that.
I have to say, because I'm going to flick on to the last book, because I'm just so proud of myself for reading a book for
I saw that.
But when we talk about it, obviously I was reading, I was like, this is great. You know, I've obviously read one of his others, listened on Audible. So I was like, okay, this is something I'm going to bond with, because I'm all about that happy life, enjoying things. And obviously the first part, I was like getting really excited, and I was like, oh yeah, this is great. This is great. And then they also hit that point in the book where it's like, okay, these are the things you can do. Don't worry if you're not living the life you love just yet. There are things that you can do to change it. But there was a point that I was just like, I'm not. And it started having the adverse effect of what it was trying to do. And I was like, you've got to go through this, because this is also you, say my line, owning your shit and owning the fact that I'm not doing what I want. The only person who can change it is me. The book is making me think about the stuff that I'm not doing, and actually to step forwards and change the outcome, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the last time we were on our call, where we had so much fun talking about being humorous or taking life a little lightly, we spoke about some books, and you know, some of those titles, if I may mention them. Is that an appropriate time now to mention some of those titles?
Go ahead.
So the first one is Dopamine Nation. You can Google it and it will tell you the name of the author. The Dopamine Nation is a book that I recently read and I get my clients to read. Basically, it's a book about addiction, yet everybody's an addict. People don't know it, but we're all addicted. In one form or the other, we're addicted to pleasure, whether it's social media, whether it's pornography, whether it's partying, whether it's happy meals, or whatever the form of distraction is. We are all addicts. And what we're trying to do is escape from pain. because pain is not comfortable. So this book really sheds the light on addiction, and shows us why we're so addicted, and it's focused on dopamine. It is the book of the age as far as I'm concerned, because it's so subversive. And that's where, as a self-help book, it's very powerful, because it gives you the context of modern day society with our addiction to social media and feel good therapy. Everything is feel good. Do we ever watch a YouTube video that makes us feel bad? No. Do we ever read an Instagram post that we hate reading? Do we get onto people's Instagram and LinkedIn posts that we don't like? No, because all we do is pain aversion and pleasure seeking. And that's a problem, because growth happens through pain and through discomfort and through putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. So that's a very revealing book. The other book is The Courage to be Disliked. Another book that I recommend all my clients to read. The Courage to be Disliked is based on the teachings of Alfred Adler, and I'm a huge proponent of Adlerian philosophy or psychotherapy. And his big catchline is that all problems for humans stem from interpersonal relationship problems. This is the crux of all our problems in society, is our ability to communicate effectively with our peers, with our spouses, with our family, and all the rest of it. So, and as you can tell from the title, The Courage to be Disliked. A society, I was talking this morning how everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to be the nice guy, the nice girl. Nobody wants to be that person they call bad, But the problem is, good is an moving goalpost, because you're good today, and the same thing you did today was like, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. But I was fine saying that yesterday. Now you hate me for saying it today. It's the same thing with everything. So when we fall into the trap of trying to be good citizens, we lose out. And so it's a very powerful title, written by two Japanese people. One of the most powerful books that I've read in a long time, The Courage to be Disliked. And thirdly, I'm sure you know and everybody knows, is James Clear's Atomic Habits, a sensational book to read about the 1% rule and about effective change. So those are my three picks. I've got another 100 more, but we have limited time. And then the people watching can also give their recommendations.
Yeah, of course they can. I mean, there's some support coming in for exactly what you just said. And actually, obviously also listening, which is fabulous to see you guys. But obviously we've got about another 20 minutes. And of course, Rishad's given some great books. But like I said, I've read one book in about 3 years. And that's not because of lack of trying, guys. I go for my Audible. So I've actually gone back to Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. Okay. When I first listened to this, I was like, okay, this is really good. Yeah. Okay. There's some really good things. I first listened to it in the start of 2020. So it's just before COVID. My business was doing well. I had money, really good and all this. And I was just like, okay, let's start doing this. Then, of course, obviously, we've had the whole few years, but I hadn't realized exactly sort of some of the messaging in it. So now I've started listening to it again. I'm like, okay, there's much more in this than what I first took away, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but I found the way she was lighthearted, found it easy to listen to. She made me smile. So I was like, okay, I can get this. So it was quite fun to listen to. But each time I listen, I pick up something slightly different, something slightly more. And again, it's not a finance book. That was the thing. First time I listened to it, I was just like, okay, it's money, relationships and things like this. It's actually a money manifesting book. And that was something I hadn't quite really understood the first time I took it on.
Yeah. Well, at least you found a book that was light and humorous and didn't sound like an accounting textbook, because that's, I had a client and she was so resistant to my suggestions. I said to her, why aren't you taking your business in a bigger way? Why are you acting so small? And then she got really angry with me. She says, well, why do you have to talk about money? It's very, very confusing. And I don't like talk about it. It's not my industry. And almost getting instantly overwhelmed, because they've made, not they, but we've perceived it like making money is some kind of obscure thing reserved for people that have got MBAs from Harvard, when in fact it's accessible to everyone. And it's a simple matter of understanding abundance rather than numbers and profit and loss statements and all the rest of it, which is quite boring. People like, the entrepreneurs that we see don't necessarily come from accounting background. If you look at the top 50 entrepreneurs in the world today, very few of them come from accounting background. They come from passion. They come from dreams. They come from the never give up belief in their crazy idea. And I've got one right now that I'm working on, and I'm pushing forward through it, and quite a lot of resistance in me saying, can I pull this off? Will it work? And so changing directions a little bit, and you'll see some of it coming up in a little while. So yeah, change is always terrifying. It's always difficult, but I said it's now or never. I'd like to live like that, now or never. So as I did a post that says, get off the sidelines. So since I did a post about get off the sidelines, I said I've got to take some of my own medicine. Your own medicine is a lot more bitter than when you give it to other people.
Yes. You're talking to somebody who's on 3 courses at the moment. I'm kind of like, oh dear. But again, what it's doing, it's forcing me into the working on my business, working on me, doing, being more structured with my time, pushing through when I'm just like, okay, I need to get this done, the boring stuff that I don't want to do, make myself have the time management and things like this. So when you're talking through about pushing through, but that actually connects to one of the books I listened to a while ago was The Chimp Paradox. Have you read that one?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I didn't read the whole book, but I know about the book. Who's the author? Let me check it out. You carry on. Tell me about it. I want to check it out quickly.
I can tell you I've got it on my Audible.
No, you carry on. Yeah. Why was that so interesting for you?
But it was just a case of because obviously
Steve Peters. Steve Peters, right? Yeah.
And the thing is, when we have that chatter in our brain, sometimes you think it's chatter, you have to shut it up. But what I took away from that is not the fact it's chatter to shut up; it's chatter to question. And because there's sometimes you're having the chatter because there's a purpose behind it. There's something deeper that's going on. Sometimes it's just a case of, oh, it's raining. Do you really want to go to the gym? And when they're going like little chimp brain, oh, but you don't have to go. You don't have to go to the gym. It's wet outside. You could just do this. And for you to sit there and question and go, actually, do I need to go? What's the purpose of me going? Actually, it is something I need to do. The fact it's this, thank you for questioning. I mean, that's just one example, but that's the sort of thing when you get these thoughts coming up and it makes you sometimes stop because sometimes we act so responsive, we respond to them. And of course, being somebody who's much more used to be, so I'm still very emotional, still very passionate. But again, it was a case I can respond very well on impulse. So sometimes it's made me slow down a little bit just to actually question why there's something just gone into your head, and rather than listen to it or ignore it, question it and find a bit more out about it.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and something that I teach my clients all the time is exactly that. Never ignore anything, because anything you ignore, you make bigger. Actually, by you giving it its full attention, you make it smaller. We're taught to run away from everything that we dread or are afraid of, and I realize how counterproductive that is. So I look at everything with compassion, never with even the questioning. It's always with a compassionate eye. Why is it that you don't feel like you need to go to the gym today, for instance, right? Instead of, well, what the hell's wrong with you? You should be going to the gym. That approach is always very useful. So for me, I was talking about the same thing this morning, is that there's 3 different parts to us, and all 3 of them are generally not in agreement. So we have starting off at our amygdala, you could say our primal brain or our monkey brain, you could say. And that's based on instinct. Then we have the secondary function, which is now to do with emotions. And the emotion part of ourselves is our emotional intelligence, or how we feel emotionally. Then the third part, which is the latest development according to evolutionary biologists, is the neocortex, right? Which is your third level of complexity. That gives us the rational ability. That's why we can say, why is it that we don't feel we want to go to the gym today? If we didn't have that rational faculty, we couldn't even ask that question. So what ends up happening is you have instinct, you have intelligence, and then you have intuition. They're almost like 3 different levels. It's important to understand. Now, also, when the monkey brain, which is your amygdala, is very much subject to pain or pleasure. That's it. If I eat the banana, make me feel full. If I eat the rotten one, give me diarrhea. Avoid the rotten one, eat the good one. It makes sense. You know how to avoid pleasure. It's the same thing, how to avoid pain at any cost. But sometimes, as the gym example, which you rightfully used, it's going and eating the rotten banana, in the case of going to the gym, doing something that may seem as pain, that gives long-term benefit. And we're the only creatures that are able to defer our joy for a later time. The rest of the species is generally, well, if you look at monkeys specifically, or apes, it's immediate gratification. And if you look at most people's behavior, especially on online social media, it's prone to instant gratification. We're not prepared to delay the gratification because we're wired that way. So it's questioning it and say, why can't I wait for the cheesecake on Friday? Friday is treat day. My wife used to call it cheat day, and she says, no, I realize I've got to call it treat day. Right? I'm sure you agree because you're a body coach.
I actually nowadays try and stay away from the words treat or cheat, because
what do you call it?
Simply
why? Because why?
I call it like reward. So it's
Reward.
a case of, because when you're cheating, it feels like you're being naughty, if that makes sense. You're cheating, you're breaking something. When you're treating yourself, it kind of feels that sort of, it's that sort of thing that you shouldn't be doing, because it's the sort of really nice, maybe like that luxury cake or something. But when we start having cheat days and treat days as what we do, it's sometimes just a break from what we normally eat, so a bit more relaxed. So it might not be anything luxurious. It's just that reward for the hard work that we've been putting in. So also, when you look at reward, we're looking at then success. So again, it's that positive affirmation of going, I'm going to be more successful. Oh, I've done something really well. I'm going to reward myself for what I've achieved this week. So just that sort of change of the language that I've been trying to work toward adopting.
That's, everything is in the language. Liz, I have a question for you. So say someone is on a diet and an exercise program and did really well. And now they're slacking. They put on a bit of weight. They're getting a bit lazy. I don't like the word lazy, but let's say they're saying, I'm getting lazy. They're now sabotaging themselves, and you can clearly see it. They're giving themselves extra hard time. They may even have that extra slice of bread or whatever it is. And each pound that they gain is almost like a guilt pound. It's almost like they're pounding the guilt into them. How do you reverse that? Because that is so difficult to change.
It is, but let's look at, okay, so if we go and say a diet or like a boot camp or something, we're doing this for say a 6 or 8 week period, okay, so or to hit a certain goal.
This was a couple of years. So, there was a goal. Yeah, there was a goal. Yeah.
So there's a goal. We hit whatever benchmark that is, whether it's a time period or whether it's a weight period. Then what happens is it's a case of, tick, I've done that. I don't have to do everything I've been doing anymore. So in some way in your mind, you sort of let go a little bit.
Yeah.
What then happens is you will go back to eating all this bread or whichever it is, and the body obviously rebounds and doesn't like it. What you need to do is actually have the change of it is that habit. So rather than being restricted and going, okay, I can't eat this, can't eat this, instead of just going all out and going, okay, it's fine, I've reached my goal, being a little bit more adaptive and sort of habit changing it so it becomes part of your lifestyle again. So for example, if you cut out bread completely for 2 years, okay, to lose weight, you're like, okay, no starchy carbs, none of this. The minute you start having them again, you can only handle them in small amounts because your body's not used to it. So if you want to introduce them, that's why you have to do it in sort of a phase down. So what you would then look at doing is going, okay, what can I do to maintain my weight? So I do need to eat well, I do need to be exercising, and setting yourself real achievable benchmarks. So it's not as restrictive as being in on a diet or regime as you know, or thinking I can't do this because of anything, but allowing yourself the space to have a fixed target each day. So whether it's a case of, okay, I know I need to maintain this, to work out 4 days a week, I know I need to eat this many sort of calories, and I know how that looks when I eat it because I've managed my food for so long, then you start maintaining that. You still need to maintain it. So this is where people go on diets or hit goals. They go wrong is because they just sort of relax and don't do anything that the body's needing.
Right. That's great. But what happens if you now, I think that approach from the beginning is really good. Now, let's say you're in it and you've fallen off the wagon, right? Something's happened. You couldn't resist that sourdough bread with that extra creamy butter and that blueberry jam with a lovely cappuccino with extra sugar. And the next thing you know, you're having that every day for a month. And now you're like, shit. And I come up to you and go, well, of course you put on a couple of kilos. Look what you've been eating. And they're like, yeah, I'm such an idiot. I didn't even see that coming.
It's okay. But
so what do you do now? Because the damage is done. I've gained the weight.
Yeah, but you can still, again, the body will yo-yo and change weight over time. Women as well, we change weight all the time. Okay, more so than men sometimes because of our water retention.
Right.
But
right.
again, it's a case of looking and
so
going,
you're basically good if you're a man, but if you're a woman, then since your weight fluctuates, I'm just joking.
It's much harder. But again, it's a case of, okay, you've made a mistake. You've realized eating this way doesn't work. So let's look at what's going to work for you.
But that's where the coach comes in. I'll tell you why. Because that's when I'm battling myself. Like this woman, now she's at war with herself. And every day that passes, it's becoming more and more difficult. That's where you need someone to say, someone like you saying, we got this kind approach. No need to get all military style on me, even though you have the military background if you need it. And it's like, and that's where you need that. Because it's like reverse momentum now. I've seen how they suffer at the stage. Because you're almost like battling yourself at the stage.
Yeah. So this is where the emotions and the mind come stronger than what you're doing, because particularly if it's a female, because we are a bit more emotional than gents. It comes in like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. How can I have done this? I can't, and the sort of the self-hate, it comes onto us because we're sort of owning it, but not in a healthy way.
Yeah.
We're actually in the case of, okay, you made a mistake. You thought you could go back to how it was before. Your body's different. Okay, let's look at your body now. What's generally not making you feel good? Okay, you've put on the weight. Let's look at things that aren't so good for you, what you're eating and what you're drinking. Let's look at realistic changes. Okay, you're having this 200-calorie caramel latte every single day. Is that something you need, or could you change that and have that as your enjoyable reward when you go out on a Saturday and meet a friend? Would that work better? So then it's changing the relationship with these sorts of foods so that you don't feel that I can't have that. But whereas you feel like a crutch where you're leaning on having it every day or something like this. I did it when I had retainers. It was a caramel, because I was comforting. I was having a caramel latte every single day, which was like, that's how I know it's 287 calories if you got it from Pret.
Wow.
And I was having at least one or two every day because I was comforting. Because my teeth hurt. I was like this, and I was eating chip butters, were my favorite thing because they were soft.
I love chip butter.
Great. Oh, they're amazing. I think they're great. But then it was the case of realizing, okay, what in my day is that? I mean, I was craving broccoli. Broccoli was the big thing I was craving. I was like, I really want some broccoli.
Oh, really? That's a healthy craving.
Yeah, it was a case of I'd gone past all the sort of the crappy food, and I actually was craving broccoli, but it's because of the minerals in it. So I'd gone past the crave of chocolate, was refusing to let myself go completely overboard because I knew I was having like the lattes and stuff like this. So I was actually craving fresh broccoli. Some of it was like, I want to crunch it, and I couldn't crunch with my teeth without breaking my retainer. But this was only like 2018. This wasn't a huge amount of time ago. And then it's the change in the relationship. We're going, okay, looking at all what I was doing and realizing, okay, if I keep on like this, I'm either going to have to train really, really hard to burn it, but I'm not really fueling my body because it's like that sort of caramel latte, sort of negative calories. There's nothing, empty calories. Or I can change my relationship with that sort of foods. So yeah, if I go into town and have a Starbucks with my friend and get the big thing, I get the whipped cream, I get everything on it because it's now a reward. But my daily coffee is my black coffee. So it's just that sort of changing that relationship of realizing it actually, you might want a coffee every day, but you don't need that fully loaded. Oh, look, you want to have that sourdough toast. Do you need to have butter and jam and all this? Why not have the sourdough toast and have some peanut butter on it? So you've got some really good fats going in. You've got some proteins. It's a slightly different change, but that could change it for you.
That's very useful, Liz. I'm so glad I asked you that. Regarding books on this topic, there's a book that a client of mine told me about called Glucose Revolution. And many people have said many good things about this book. Lady's name is Jessie and Shospier. I don't know, I probably said it wrong, but a book worth checking out, because today's a great, you could call it epidemic, is to do with diabetes and glucose and the carbs and the sugars, which are not evil, as you know. However, managing our insulin and blood sugar levels is vital, and this book is excellent. For instance, she says 20 minutes before you eat a meal to drink some apple cider vinegar, which apparently reduces the insulin spike by something like 40%, which is quite phenomenal, which is very useful. And some people even say to add it to your carbs. It's the apple cider vinegar reduces the load of insulin on your or sugar load on your body, and makes your pancreas work less hard. So I recommend that book. Have you heard of it, Liz?
Yeah, I have. And I was just looking at the one that I was listening to, which was about glucose, was the Obesity Code by Jason Fung. Okay. So again, that talks a lot about the glucose and things like this, and of course how your body manages it, because obviously we'll burn blood sugar, the glucose, before we hit into our glycogen stores. And if we hit into our glycogen stores, it can take 6 to 8 hours roughly to burn that, so we can get it as energy. But then after that, we go into ketosis. And obviously, it's only after we burn the glycogen do we generally burn fat. And if you're constantly supplying your body with negative calories and fat and all the stuff you don't want, then it's going to sort of not burn effectively. The same as if you're avoiding carbs, because carbohydrates are first source of glucose and the blood sugars. So our body will use those first. So if you avoid carbohydrates altogether, you can have a positive effect, but long term can have a very negative effect on your body. So that's
there's all these little things as science progresses to help us to deal with the overconsumption society that we have today. But that's all wonderful. They say that people in the third world don't have thyroid problems. It's quite a irony there. They just have a food supply problem. But yeah, well, it's also not just because it's what's the funny thing, very interesting thing, that it's the low income earners in very wealthy societies that suffer the most adverse health consequences, because they're eating all the cheap stuff. Your cheap carbs, your breads, pastas, and all the rest of it, and the cheap sugars, and the corn sugar, corn syrup that's been used in the sugar. Liz, I have to get going, but
well, I'm just going to leave with one book just to close off some positives about carbs, because 𝐸𝐞𝐫𝐬𝐽, because they talk in there about the Japanese diet and all this. One thing they do mention is about how they have such a high rice diet, but with obesity is very low within their culture. So, guys, we've had a few books there. So obviously, Rishad's mentioned one. I've mentioned the Obesity Code. There's a few coming in. If you've got any questions, because Rishad has to go, and I refuse to let him be late.
You can stay on chat if people want to. I don't know. Have there any questions before
we've still
we walk off into the sunset together? Then holding hands, virtually holding hands together.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's quite sweet. But guys, do drop in your comments, thoughts, and questions, even if you are on Team Replay or you've actually here and you're just catching up and thinking of something. Because what we will do is, in fact, in 2 weeks' time, why don't we make this a 2-weekly thing, Rishad? Every 2 weeks, we'll come on with a fantastic topic. And
yeah, sounds good, Liz. Always a pleasure to see you.
Right, guys. So we will leave you, love you and leave you, and I will hit the closing. We'll say goodbye.
Bye. Bye, Liz.